All right, we're live, Sabrina.
Hey, great. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited about this. We got some good information coming to them.
I've been very, very excited. I was thinking about it earlier, and with all of the feedback that we got from some of the posts, and people share that this is actually information that they need.
Yeah.
So I think that's awesome that you and I are in a position to really give people information that they need as it relates to real estate and the estate planning process, which can be a
Yep.
monster, right?
Oh, yeah. I can't tell you how many calls I get specifically about real estate. Trying to sell, and they said I need some sort of letters.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're here to try to straighten all that out.
All right. So I thought it would be cool to tell our audience how we met.
Yeah.
Sabrina and I met in May of this year, and we both share the same platform in being selected as one of 50 most dynamic women of the Charlotte region for the Charlotte Media Group. And at the event, there were a lot of people there,
Yeah.
but Sabrina and I just connected
Yep.
and we exchanged information. We even went to, was it breakfast?
Yeah.
We went,
Across the street, had some coffee and breakfast.
yeah, right. What was the name of the restaurant that we met at?
It's Amelie's. It's the French bakery, which I'm sorry I've ever introduced you to it because, yeah, it's not.
I love it.
It's
I
really good.
So, but that just gives you an idea how long we've been talking or collaborating or trying to get something together to bring to you all
Yep.
as it relates to my area of expertise, which is real estate, and also Sabrina's area of expertise, which is estate planning. Now, Sabrina, and I want to say this because I think this is important as well. There were a lot of people at that event, and I think you are the only person that I've actually stayed connected with. And it's a testament to one of my philosophies with networking. You know, often we go to events and we're passing out business cards left and right. We
Yep.
don't follow up. And I have this philosophy about quality over quantity and making those genuine, true connections. And the fact that we're here today, positioned to provide people with value with our areas of expertise, is exactly what networking looks like. So I'm excited about that. And I was thinking about that and saying, you know what? This is effective. This is good. Thinking about
Yeah.
how we met, the fact that we, shared a meal together or, met for breakfast and have even been in contact because, we were supposed to roll this out in August, right?
Yes. We
So,
did. We had plans for that, and then life happened. But what I remember about how we actually at that moment met, we kind of both stopped each other, and you had heard what I did when I was called up, and I heard what you do when you were called up, and we both just said to each other, "I need you. My clients need you," right? So it's about keeping our clients at the forefront, really, and how we can help them. And Charlotte really is a relationship based community,
mhm,
and people trust you because they know you because they have a relationship with you.
mhm.
And I think it's great that we've kept connected, and I've followed all of your amazing things that you share on social media, which are really great because some of the things I'm not allowed to say to my clients,
Mhm.
somebody else has to say it to them. So it's nice to be able to share that. So
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right. So, where do we get started? And if it's okay, I like to make this just as informal as possible. We're both people. We just happen to have our area of expertise. Um,
absolutely.
all right. So I'll jump in and say, when it comes to real estate, one of the things that I always advocate for is holistic services,
Hmm.
meaning that it's great to help you with a transaction. It's great to help you sell or buy a house. But what's next? Are you protected? Are your assets protected?
Right.
So, uh, recently, what I've started doing is adding that holistic approach to the services that I offer by having an amazing estate planning partner that I can say, hey, listen, I know the transaction is over, especially when people sell a house. They have a lump sum of money, right?
They're done.
Great time to invest in estate planning,
Right.
to make sure that when you think about your heirs or beneficiaries, that everything has been laid out. So I'm a very big advocate for this, and just making sure that people don't forget what's important. So
Right.
Sabrina, if you could tell me from that standpoint, what have you seen or what has been your experience with that?
Oh, I would have to say that the two biggest obstacles I have seen that are challenging are either clients have not done any preparation, meaning there's no will or trust in place at all. And now one of the owners to the real estate has died. Nobody has a clue what to do. Or they've almost planned the way they thought things would happen, but the planning wasn't quite done the right way and everybody's hands are tied. And also going back to even before that, sometimes these deeds aren't even titled the correct way. Clients think they're titled the right way, but after somebody passes away, which is typically the only reason other than a refinance, right, that anybody would want to look at their deed, they're realizing, oh, wait a second, I thought it was with rights to survivorship, but it's not. And then their planning fails.
Okay.
So it's
So
something.
you're referring to the process of how someone originally takes title
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
real estate in North Carolina, and there's various ways. So, and all of them have legal uh, consequences
Yeah.
based on how you take title. Some ownership is passes through inheritance, whereas other types of ownership does not pass through inheritance. So
Correct.
I'm definitely agreeing with what you're saying there, because but I didn't know that it was common that people don't understand the type of title that they have
Mhm. Well,
to.
it is common, unfortunately, but if you go and think about what that whole process looks like about buying a house,
Mhm.
nobody really even gives it that much thought other than at the beginning, we're buying it together. So some people just assume that that's how it's done and that's how it's prepared. And many times it's done correctly. But I think it's the lack of education and explaining to closing people that, this is this is what the deed says. Is this what you want? Just confirming it with the client. Um, but a lot of people don't realize there needs to be some special language in some of these deeds in order for it to pass as soon as somebody dies. So, like, if Jane and John own real estate together and their intent is that the survivor own it completely as soon as the other one passes, that there needs to be language there sometimes to make that happen. And why would a lay person even know that? It's not their job.
Yeah, and you're right, because I know. Are you referring to joint tenants with rights or survivorships?
Yep,
Because I believe in North Carolina that the default is tenants in common.
correct.
So if they opt for the default and it's not specified, then should someone pass away, you have an issue, right?
Yeah, you have an issue, especially if you didn't think it was going to end up that way.
Oh
Uh,
God.
but nobody's really talking to their clients about that. And so why would they even know to ask it? I'm coming into it wanting it to be with rights of survivorship, not my job to write the deed the correct way.
Correct.
So why would I even know how to see that or look at that, or what do I do with that? That's not, as a buyer or seller, that's not my job to know.
Right. So that's interesting. That's good stuff. That's a good tip. So what we're finding here is that when you take title to uh, real estate, we have to be knowledgeable or understand what the deed or the language on the deed actually says and what that means if you're taking it with, another owner, co-current ownership.
Yep.
The other thing I wanted to ask is, because this is a question that I get a lot from my clients, is when it comes to a will versus a trust, which one do I need and why? And I know you're probably going to say it depends.
Yeah, it depends. That's just my blanket answer throughout this entire live. It depends.
Right.
So there are questions that a client needs to answer for me, and every client is going to be different. Every client's fears, concerns, needs, goals, planning, it is very specific to every single client that I sit with. And I have a lot of clients that walk in and they read somewhere that they needed a trust, or they heard somebody say they needed a trust, and they come in with, we want a trust. Well, I don't address it that way. Estate planning is not transactional. It is relationship based. I need to understand who you are, your family, your goals, your needs, your fears, all of that. And you're deciding whether you need a trust or a will. Not everybody is going to benefit from a trust. So it's typically, and this is going to vary across the board, but it is typically for those individuals that want to avoid that big probate process of having to settle an estate through court. They want to keep their assets private after they die, and they want to make the transition from their name to the ownership of their beneficiaries as smooth as possible. There are other ways to do that outside of a trust, but we explain that to our clients. We educate them before they make their decisions, but we do ask a lot of questions before we get to that point. Wills and trusts are not typically in a category for certain people. It's based on what that individual really needs, and whether that document's going to provide it to them or not.
Right. Thank you for that, Sabrina. Sounds like estate planning is a lot like real estate. Too often we look at it as a transaction, but it is relational in that we get to know our clients, know their families, understand their needs, and their financial situation.
Absolutely.
So can be the best advocate and make sure that we're protecting their interests. I know one of the things that I've also heard as it relates to real estate with, someone being the executor or the administrator of the estate, should I sell it myself? I would say no.
No. That's a clear board. No.
Yeah. Make sure that you are consulting with a knowledgeable real estate agent, because there's so many moving pieces to it. It's not the same process as selling a home that you own, right? Especially if it has to go through the probate process, getting your letters of administration, the notice to your creditors that has to go into the newspaper. How long does it have to run? Can I list the house before the time period is up? And then what's most important is making sure that you list it for the fair market value.
Right. That's right.
Because there's taxes involved that could be, and I'm not an expert on taxes, but I know enough to advise my clients on, hey, you may want to seek the help of a professional tax advisor if you are selling property that you have inherited. Not only that, making sure that you have the fair market value. And real estate brokers, we do what we call a comparative market analysis. And I want to be very clear in saying that real estate brokers are not appraisers. So we can't give that official opinion of value.
Yeah.
But a great broker can do the comparative market analysis to give you the most probable sales price to help you come up with the fair market value. Because if you're having to disperse the proceeds against heirs and beneficiaries, because that's your job as the executor or the administrator, you want to make sure that you actually get enough money to do that and pay the right?
That's
So it's a different process. And I would definitely say don't attempt it yourself because it does require the expertise of someone who's actually, who has that experience.
mm-hmm.
I want to pause for just a moment. Sabrina, I'm going to check our live. I told you we were not going to be perfect. Live, I told you. But I want to make sure. Okay, great information, Sharon says. Okay, so
Thank you, Sharon.
if there's anyone who has any questions specifically for me or Sabrina, go ahead and ask them. We're not going to pretend to be perfect. We're just going to try to answer your questions, monitor the chat. What you got? Sabrina, is there anything else that you want to add?
I do. I want to add a couple of things that you mentioned. And I think, I'm called into real estate brokerage firms often to speak to the group of agents to help them understand what they're looking for when they're going to somebody's home to sell. Because way too often they are in so deep into the process and then they realize that this was an inherited piece of property, or this was a piece of property that was owned with somebody that passed away, and everything has to stop. Mm-hmm. And it starts with pulling the deed. When you're doing your due diligence, pull the deed and ask the right questions. The worst thing that will happen is when you don't do that, you could lose a potential buyer. Because now you may have to do some sort of process in the court that's going to take a little bit of time. And then your buyer may not be willing to wait around for that anymore. So if you have all of your information up front, then you know how to talk to your potential seller and explain to them, we need to get somebody in to help you with this part while I look for a buyer for you. At least the buyer knows that they might need to wait, but you know better than me, Alicia, in this market, I don't know that buyers are, they're waiting because they really want properties. And it's hard to find the ones that they fall in love with or the ones that they fall in love with. But it starts at the beginning and understanding that you need to do this for your clients helps them because your client doesn't want to lose a buyer. They don't want to go through that whole process. They want to get rid of it. And that's their main goal is how quickly can I get rid of this? And what do I do with my stuff in the house, right? Nobody wants, if you've inherited a piece of property, nobody wants my stuff. My daughter's already told me I have no taste whatsoever. So I'm pretty sure all that stuff's going to the curb when we're both gone, which is fair. But there are things that have to happen. You might have to get somebody to move all that stuff out or donate it all. That takes time with coordinating the availability of a company and somebody to be present and all of that. So it starts at the beginning, I think, when you are talking to your buyers. Let's see what's going on.
Sabrina, you struck a heart string because as an educator for real estate, we should be doing consultations with our sellers.
Yeah.
And a part of that is pulling that deed.
Yeah.
How can you talk to someone about purchasing or selling their home if you're not sure that they are the rightful owner, right? So that should be step number one before you leave your house.
Right. That's right.
Is pulling the deed to make sure that you are talking to the rightful owner based on the deed. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing I want to mention, I love having you to myself, right, as a resource, but I think you are an awesome resource for other firms because this is a topic that I find a lot of brokers struggle with, estate planning. And then when you have those properties that you may be working with an executor or the administrator, how to navigate that process. Now, is that what you do, or do you actually do the paperwork?
So it depends where they're at in the process. It's typical that their client will ultimately hire my firm to do whatever that process in court looks like, and help them settle the estate. When I am brought in to kind of educate in real estate agencies, and I do HR and I do financial planners as well. It's because it's so relationship based. And I truly believe your job is to build relationships with your clients as you do. It just makes sense to have these kinds of conversations with your clients. It makes sense to prepare them for obstacles in the future. It makes sense to let them know what their options are if A, B, C, and D happen. And understanding that it's always the client's decision, but they can't make the best decision without being educated. And that's my job, and that's your job to do that for our clients.
You're spot on, because what I believe is if we are not providing that holistic service to make our clients whole, we're probably not doing them great service.
I
And I
agree.
know that's wrong, but this is why building relationships with estate planning attorneys or financial advisors, anybody that your client, who a lot of times becomes our friends, would need to be made whole in a transaction. You mentioned something earlier about, if there are items in the home and having to clean out the home and things of that nature. That's important, because when you look at going through the probate process and there is real estate that's involved in that process and you have to sell it for the fair market value. Well, part of getting the fair market value is to make sure that the property is marketed in its best light. And if you have all of the ancient antique stuff in there and you don't have time to properly market the property, then that's going to be an issue.
That's right. And, there's a lot of people who like to keep a lot of things and don't get rid of things. And you can't sell a home at market if you're walking into a situation where there's a lot of clutter and there's a lot of things in the way. And clients need to know what they're allowed to do with those things. And what they're allowed to do completely depends on ownership, on whether there was a will or a trust, how are things in those documents distributed. So it's not just a one and done. It's multiple follow-up questions and multiple things that have to be considered before I can even tell a client what they're allowed to do with all the things inside that house.
Wow. Okay. Let me just pause for a moment just to check our comments. Okay. Let me just pause for a moment just to check our comments. Okay. Let me just pause for a moment just to check our comments. There is a question in the chat, and I know that my speaker actually goes off, so bear with me. Should a husband and a wife speaker actually goes off, so bear with me. Should a husband and a wife look at changing the default on a deed when purchasing a home?
It depends. Generally speaking, husbands and wives, when they are already married and they are buying their home, they are buying it together as a husband and wife, and it's a special ownership. It's automatically with rights of survivorship as a husband and wife, unless you write something different. Typically, all you would need probably is something that says, John Doe and Jane Doe, his spouse. Mm-hmm. That's typically enough. And you can comment more on that, Alicia, to say this is marital property. This is owned by tenancy by the entireties. Automatically have a survivorship aspect built in. Now, I say depends because there are things that you can do that exclude a spouse from owning that home. And, that's where consulting with either a family lawyer in conjunction with somebody like me comes into play, because I don't do things that are not in my lane. And that's why I have my go-to people to ask questions of, but also to refer clients to. And some of these questions deal with family law that I know to spot the issues. It's kind of like being back in law school. I could spot the issue. I can kind of tell you what the answer is, but I'm not the one to definitively tell you that. And it's not always just me that they have to rely on, or just you. It could be, a team of people. So I say depends, because it really matters on what, your ultimate goal is for that. And if anything else was done in addition to that deed.
Thank you, Sabrina. I will add this, and just it brings to mind is husband and wife. Like you said, there's automatically a survivorship right there. And so it does depend. Think about blended families. Right?
Oh, yes. Oh,
yes. And blended is not always bad, but what happens if you have a husband and a wife, and they're a blended family, and the children are looking to have some right in that. So that might be one of the reasons for it depends, right? Or
right.
And here's the thing. Did you know, and I'm sure but I'm talking to our audience, in North Carolina, it only takes one to buy and two to sell, right?
Very odd, but yes.
If you are a married couple, right? So that means that, if you purchase a property in severalty as a sole owner, right, and you become married, okay, one to buy, but both persons have to sign off on the contract in order to sell that property. So that's something that, and they have a marital interest in it.
Mm-hmm. They do. And was there a prenup or a postnup? Right, like nothing is cut and dry ever. There's no black and white answers, and I wish there were, because it really would make it a lot easier to do planning. But there's no black and white, and you're right, Alicia. There's marital interests specific to real estate that don't convert to other assets. That people need to understand that relationship. Blended families is a big deal. I have plenty of clients who, in their previous marriage, got their home. Now their new marriage, they're both living in that other home, but the wife's name has continued to be the only owner on that. And guess what? No will, no trust, no new deed, and the wife passes away. It's not automatic that it's going to go just to the spouse. Now you're looking at intestate laws.
Right.
I had a client a long time ago who they were separated, and they had very interesting method of holding their real estate. It was just in the wife's name with no planning. And it ended up being where the surviving husband, because they hadn't been divorced yet, and did not have a written separation agreement, he owned his marital home with his two minor kids. And he had no idea that was going to happen. And it was all because there was nothing in writing. We had to look at intestate laws, meaning North Carolina decides who gets what. And nobody revisited that deed when he left. That was a mess. I mean, imagine owning your own home with two minor kids, which they can't own it. We had to do trusts for them. It was horrible. It was just a horrible thing. But how would he know? Like, how would he know if it didn't start at the beginning with the education and the explaining?
It's, Sabrina, what you just described is the reason that seeking out these professional services are so important.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody has their own unique situation, and you want to make sure that when you die, that to the best of your ability, you've already put a plan in place as to what you want for your assets,
right?
How you want them to pass, who you want to inherit, and it takes planning. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to plead with the people that are watching, or that maybe watching the replay. If you have not sought out to get estate planning or talk to someone, please make sure that you do, because it's so important.
It is for, and a lot of it too is, it's not just about getting a will or a trust in place and understanding how things are owned. A big part of estate planning are the other documents, Like you've probably seen a lot, the financial powers of attorney that allow one of the owners to sign on behalf of the other, or a child to sign on behalf of one of the owners. That document's super important if you become incapacitated or you're just out of the country. You need a method for somebody to help you with your assets during those times. And a lot don't know, because why would they? They don't know that they need that document. They just figure, we have such a close family, I trust my kids, they're just going to do it for me. Well, I appreciate that you trust your kids. I think it's awesome. But North Carolina doesn't care about that. They just don't. It's not in the, it's in the statutes on who gets to do that. And so that becomes part of that, that discussion.
Right. And it's something that families should sit down and talk about as far as estate planning, so that, we've all seen it when someone passes away, mass confusion, chaos. Because this person thought that, and then there's nothing in writing to say where it should go. I know I have been contacted by a person that thought they had rights to sell a home. Mm-hmm. And when we got down to the bottom of it, found out they didn't have any rights whatsoever. And they were 150% confident, I can sell this home.
That's right. I promise. I'm allowed to.
Right.
It doesn't even come out of malice, right? It just comes out of what they would have done anyway. But so many things have to be in writing. It's so important. And I know that your sale contracts are really detailed. All of the things that have to do with selling are so detailed because it has to do with money. And estate planning has to do with assets and money, but so much more. Yet people don't put the effort into that. And they're not here when their family is struggling, and when there's chaos, and when there's grief on top of stress and anxiety, and I don't have any money to even pay my mortgage because my name wasn't on anything. It's horrible not to plan. And if you knew what it would be like when you left this earth, would you not do the planning, even if it was really difficult for you to address it? You would. And that's what I try to educate the community on, is how awful it's going to be for your family if you don't do any of this planning. And you don't want that for your family, right?
Yeah.
So invest in that. Invest in doing it the right way.
Sabrina, there's a question in the chat that says, if a family cannot yet afford to create a trust, how can they start small and then update as more resources are available, but at least secure the home and bank accounts, like the basics?
Thank you for that question. And I hear that a lot. At the very minimum, you need to have a will plan. Make your own decisions on who gets what, who gets to make a medical decision for you, who gets to make a financial decision for you. The bare minimum should be a will plan with all of those documents. In addition to that, oftentimes I counsel my clients on, now that I know you have a will, but we still want to try to avoid probate. I help them understand what ownership of assets looks like and beneficiary designations, because we can sometimes minimize probate even more by going that next step and addressing the beneficiary designations and ownership on the assets to avoid probate. And I would say this too. It is going to be way more expensive to fix a messy estate than it is for the investment to put it up front now. I promise you. It is really expensive to hire an attorney for probate. The process is cumbersome. It's long. It's confusing. Many of these counties don't have enough staff. So it takes a lot longer to process things, which means it takes longer to get money into sometimes surviving spouses' hands. So I would not look at just the cost of it now. Look at what the potential cost, not only monetarily, but to your family's health and well-being after you're gone. and see which one feels right to you.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. So, are there any more questions in the chat? Anything you want to ask from a real estate perspective or estate planning? I think this is awesome. I feel it right here.
Well, I have a question for you, Alicia, because this comes up a lot. You have a husband and wife that are separated, and they're looking to sell their home. What's one of the things that they both need to do? Can they both have you as their real estate agent? Do they have to hire separate? What does that look like?
It's best if they use the same agent to make sure that they streamline the process. And then you have to look at, for the way real estate works is that we have to have an agency agreement, right? And the agency agreement spells out the terms of that relationship, even down to compensation, right? So when you look at if they're going to try to get separate agency relationships, it could be with two different firms. That's not going to be the best there. It should be where they're using the same agent because they are not divorced, right?
Right.
They're still
not in this scenario. They're not divorced yet.
Yeah. And each one of those spouses have a marital interest in the property. So just to streamline it and to come to some sort of agreement as it relates to their separation or divorce or what that looks like. And I'm sure each one of them would have their own attorney for the divorce.
Which I suggest they do.
Right. Absolutely.
Share one.
Absolutely. Because, there are things that need to be spelled out in that divorce decree.
Right.
For each person's best benefit.
Right. And here in North Carolina, you need to be separated for a year. And in the separation agreement, which is the section I only care about, because again, I stay in my lane, I want to see family attorneys put the clause in that says you both are giving up rights to each other's estates, so that now you can do whatever you want in your plan, and your spouse can do whatever he or she wants in her plan, and you don't have to wait for the divorce. Right. And separated people, that's when you need to start planning. You don't need to wait till you're divorced.
I had a client who was legally divorced from his wife, and he was interested in purchasing another home. The home they had together as husband and wife, the wife kept it.
Okay.
Well, when it all came out, when he was going through the process of getting financing, although he had given up interest in that house, he still had a financial obligation. So his attorney didn't really do him justice there with the splitting of assets. So he was still liable for the debt, but he didn't have any interest in the real estate.
And he had no idea about that part.
Right. And that's important because ownership and debt are two separate things.
Two different things. Yes. Which a lot of people don't get that part. Well, I am the owner. Yes, I know, but who's obligated to pay? Well, we both own it. I understand that. Who's obligated to pay? Because it's not always married couples both on the mortgage. And it's not always the married couple is on the deed. And you have to dig deep. Again, it was their intent. That's how they wanted it to be. So why isn't it like that? But sometimes things are overlooked, and those become issues later.
Well, the thing I want to point out is that, and if people don't remember anything else about, buying as married couple, is it takes one to buy and two to sell.
Yeah.
So, husband could go out and get the debt. Cool. but the wife also has an ownership interest. And should, God forbid, they divorce, then that's where they need to make sure that their attorneys are advocating for their best interest.
That's right. That's what we're supposed to be there for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Give them all of the options so that they can make the best decision. Because once they know all of the planning options and what they're supposed to do and all their options for selling, once they make their decision, then our job is done. You've given them an educated option and they chose whatever it is that they chose, and that's it. You're protected and they understand possible ramifications to their decision. And that's the best you can do. But if you don't educate your clients and you're not listening to them, how are you going to even find them the right home, the right location, the right price, the right everything, without having those open discussions and, really understanding who your clients are? And that's how we should all work.
I'll share this with you and others as well. That's why I am a big fan of consultations. Mm-hmm. I get many people that will send me a message in my inbox about purchasing a home, or they may send me a text or call. And I will often route them to my website to book the consultation, because I want to dedicate time to find out what it is you need and how I can best serve you. And I pray that when I do that, people don't take it as, oh, she's pushing me off. No, I respect your situation more than giving you a consult. Well, you can't even give a consultation through an inbox or a text or over the phone. I want to do an old-fashioned sit-down meeting. Let's talk about it. Let me find out who you are, what you need. I want to know who your family is. How many children do you have? I hope to remember their names.
Right.
I want to do business with you.
Yeah.
And like you said, the consultation is about educating you. If there was a question or something you didn't know, allow me the space and the time to educate you on the process and let you know what the process requires up front. And I hope that, my clients do respect that, because they end up being my clients.
That's right. That's right.
But
I think it's important.
Well, it's one of the largest transactions that you will make in your lifetime.
That's right.
And some people only do it once. So I value the decision you need to make enough to dedicate time to educate you through the process.
Agreed. And we're not for everybody. This is a lesson I've learned, and I'm okay with it. I require certain things of my clients when you become a client. And a big part of that is understanding my procedures are in place, because the end result, there's steps to get there. You're not just diving in. You're going to take small steps to the end of the diving board before you get to your signing and you jump in. And if that's not the comprehensive planning that you want, then we don't have a relationship. We don't work together. And it is okay, because in the long run and at the end of the day, the client has to appreciate what they're getting from you and understand that they need to follow that procedure, or the quality of work that comes from me isn't going to be where it needs to be. And it's okay. It's just how it is. And it's the same thing with you, I'm sure. If people are just ready to just sell for whatever the next buyer is that comes along, great. That's what they need to find in an agent that will help them. They're going to fight you on your processes anyway. So they'll never get to that point.
I have this saying, and I don't know if I should say this publicly, but I think I'm going to say it because I remember the tip you gave me, and I keep that confidential.
Oh.
But sometimes I'm okay with being the second choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm okay with being the second choice, which means if you came to me initially and my process or my policies were too strict for you, it's all because I want to make sure I have the space to offer you value.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's
if you don't want that value, and then you go somewhere else and you're like, wait a minute, I'm going back over here.
That's right.
I'll be the second choice.
Well, I'm sure that you've seen this where they have gone to see somebody first and they got this astronomical value of the house that would be sold. And you come in and you do your due diligence and you do the proper pre-planning for that meeting, and you're not as high as the first person. In the long run, they could go with the other person and price it so high that nobody ever bites. Or they can go with somebody like you who's been open and honest and upfront and realistic about what it's going to be. And it makes the process smoother. And the end result is you want money in your pocket sooner rather than later. You don't want to fight about it.
Right. Sabrina, this has been awesome.
I hope so. I hope that people have gotten at least, and I hate to put fear in, but a lot of this is you should be really worried about not pre-planning your estate, not having something in writing. If you've got kids, you need to be worried about that. If they're minors, if they're special needs, if you have a business, like I always say, regardless of your age, your health, your wealth, your stage in life, you have kids, no kids, you don't like kids, you're single, it doesn't matter. Everybody needs an estate plan because everybody needs to make their own decisions during a time that they can't. So don't think that you're excluded. Everybody needs it.
And people can get in where they fit in. As you mentioned, trusts are not for everyone.
They're not.
But at least have something in place.
Something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
In this particular situation.
And I just want to pause right here because sometimes we need to pause to let it sink in. If you have a spouse, if you have children, I just think it's our responsibility as responsible adults to put those plans in place and make sure that we have been proactive in planning so that whenever, whoever's over your estate, based on whatever you have in place, they have a guide and you're not leaving I think that's unfair. You're leaving people left to try to figure out what you want, and then someone else gets mad at them, and then the family gets up and
they're fending for themselves. Why? The analogy I use is people have life insurance, people have homeowners insurance, people have car insurance. Those are all things, car and homeowners insurance and disability, those are all things for the what if. What if I have a flood? What if I have a fire? What if I have an accident? But there's very little forethought or not enough in planning for something that is going to happen. You are going to pass away. Your estate plan should be viewed just like the other insurance that you have. It's protection for your things and for your family. Period. That's all I got to say on my soapbox today.
Oh, no, that's good. You're right.
But it's true. People spend more time planning a vacation that's going to be over in 10 days and a lot more money on that than it would cost to get an estate plan than they put into creating an estate plan.
Guys, you heard it.
Yeah, and the reason I say this is because I've been doing this for 20 years and I've seen the back end of the lack of planning, because part of what I do is also probate. I help families settle estates, and I see how hard it is. I saw it 20 years ago for myself in my own personal situation. And if you ever went through that process, you would be doing your estate planning immediately. Even if it's just a will with those other documents, you would do it today, because what that could put your family through is awful. And it is something that lasts forever with your family. It is something that they will carry until they pass. I've seen it in my own family.
Sabrina, I hate to be, I don't think it's negative, but I want you to say that again. As it relates to passing away, everybody has to do that.
Everybody has to do that. everybody has to pass away. We just don't know when or how or where, but everybody's going to pass away, and everybody's got something. Somebody in your family that loves you. Somebody is going to suffer more than just the grief of your passing if you don't put something in writing. And it doesn't, I've seen people fight over very little money. So there's not a threshold where you have to be above before family fights. I've seen them fight over very small things unnecessarily.
Okay.
And it's dragged out.
Sabrina, we've been having fun here. We've been on this live for almost an hour.
Excellent.
Oh,
We have
God.
so much to say.
I think it's been a great session, and I am confident and I am sure that it's going to help many.
I think our goal today was to bring awareness of the importance of knowing real estate matters as they pertain to estate planning, and estate planning matters as they pertain to real estate. And I hope everybody took notes. I can help anybody that lives in North Carolina. If you need a referral for another state, you could shoot me an email. If I have somebody that I can refer you to, I do try to do that as well. But I think we just wanted to bring it to the forefront that this is a big issue. And there are things you can do, to minimize it for your family. So I hope that we did that.
Likewise, if you are in need of someone to help you sell real estate that you have inherited through a will or other estate planning processes, I can help anyone sell in North and South Carolina. So after this live is over, Sabrina, just drop your contact information in the chat so people know where and how to reach out to you, and I'll do the same. I have one last question. Now, when you look at death in real estate, estate planning, divorce is going to be a totally different ballgame, right? Or how does that?
So, yes, to answer your question, there are different things that you need to look at. Like I said earlier, if you have a separation with that special language, do it immediately. Do you want your ex to be able to make an end of life decision for you? I'm assuming there's a good reason for your divorce and that the answer to that is no. And that's part of the documentation that you really need to update. So do it during your separation. But if you are divorced and there's a divorce decree, are all of the assets that are supposed to come to you in your hands? Do you have full control over those? Because if you don't, you need to start getting control over those, and you need to start doing your estate planning then too. If you're getting married, same thing. Blended families, you got to get it started.
So if a couple had estate planning documents in place and then they divorce, that would be another process to have all of that updated.
Yes.
Should they decide. Okay.
Yes. And most estate planning documents you can't amend. They have to be redone. And I'm not a fan of codicils to wills, which just is really you make your changes and you attach it to the back of the old will. Several reasons why that frightens me for clients. So we just get rid of those old documents, and we're going to do all new ones, and we're going to check beneficiary designations. You can't forget to check that if you've been divorced, because statutes don't automatically remove beneficiary designations. Those take precedence over your will or your trust. So you always have to go look at those to make sure you've conformed everything.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. I think our time here is up. Again, Sabrina's going to drop her contact information in the chat. And, this is not just for individuals. Sabrina does provide, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, education for firms as it relates to estate planning. So she can, help you there if that's what you need help with. I'll put my contact information in the chat. Again, I'm a licensed broker in North and South Carolina to help anyone that is looking to buy or sell real estate. All right. All right. We're going to end this for now. It's been fun.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining and for the questions, and Alicia for joining me today. I thought it was fantastic, and I hope everybody got something out of this.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye now.
Bye.